Yo, it's Derp here with another hot take. Um, should you come back to New World? That is a question that I think is pretty easy to answer. If you've already paid your $40 for it, try it out. There's nothing to stop you. But I will tell you that it's not going to be for everybody. If you didn't like the combat, if you didn't like the uh, competitive environment for the companies and PvP, if you didn't like the sweatier aspects of the game, it might not be for you. Just in general, they've done a lot to speed up the pace of the sweaty stuff for the PvE content, like the grind from 1 to 60, etc., etc. They fixed a lot of stuff, and if the game is in a way better state, I think if the game would have released this way, it would still have half of its users. I think the people that enjoy PvP would have stayed, all of them, because the PvP is really, really good right now if you like that action combat style of gameplay. I basically think the easiest way to put this is we're coming out of beta, which is kind of a shame to say because the game's been out for a year. But to me, this Brimstone Sands patch is really less of an update or a patch and more of a this is the state that the game should have released in. It's now final. Like, this is a fully fleshed out game from a good leveling system, good combat, the quest lines have been improved, etc., etc. But yeah, New World is finally out of beta. Maybe that'll be the title of this video, I don't know yet. But yeah, let's check it out. So, the first thing I want to touch on is the new player experience. The new player experience, I got to test it out on the PTR, is, in my opinion, phenomenal. The amount of work that they've put into it is very clear, very obvious. The 1 through 25, the level 1 through level 25 quest chain is completely different. There's multiple cutscenes, there's complete voice acting, there's memorable new characters that stick with you throughout the whole game. You finally learn, who Isabella is from the very beginning. She talks in your mind, and you get a lot of story, and you understand what the island of Eternum is. And it just gives an entirely new scope to the story in the game and makes it a lot more memorable. To the point where when they come out with fresh start servers, I'll talk about that later, but when they come out, I'm going to be making a new character and leveling it slowly from 1 to 60. But more than just the 1 through 25 new player experience, the amount of time that it takes you to get from level 1 to 50 is now, instead of like a few weeks of hard grinding, you could do it in like 20 hours. And it's like fun, So you're not going to be sitting there grinding the same repetitive fetch quests and kill quests over and over and over and over again. And you're not going to be able to power level yourself through the town board missions because they're nerfing the experience that you get from those by 75%. They're also increasing the amount of gold that you get from those and the rewards that you get from those to offset the costs and the time that it takes to finish those out. So they're more of a profit engine versus a leveling engine. So yeah, you can get from level 1 to 50 in like 20 hours now. You can get from level 50 to 60 in like 5 to 10, maybe like a day of hard grinding, a day or two of hard grinding. From the 500 to 600 gear score, you can get it down into a few days to a week, right? Versus it took a month, back on launch to get to 600, longer even, a few months. So, I mean, for a while we didn't even know how to do it until they came out with the obsidian, like gypsum and stuff. So it's just going to be way faster, and you're going to be able to get into that end game content way, 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 way quicker. So if that was your hang up, it's gone. Like, if you're just weren't a fan of the grind and you wanted to get to level 60, get into wars, find a competitive PvP company, and start murdering fools, then now is the time for you, because not only is it way easier to grind up to level 60 and 600 plus gear score, but you're going to have a lot more fun doing so, and it's going to be a lot faster. Another thing that they've changed with the leveling is the rate at which your crafts level. So you could get from 0 to 200 in most crafting now relatively quickly. It's still somewhat expensive, but they've cut the cost and the time required to level from 0 to 200 in crafting and refining by, I think it's by 60%. So it's less than half the time it took. I think some of them they've cut by 75 or 80%. So it's a lot faster. It's a lot cheaper. And the stuff that you do craft is more rewarding now because there's timeless shards, so you can lock in what stat you want. You could lock in what perk you want. Now there's these things called stopwatches that make it so you can have a higher chance of getting to 600, those legendary rolls. They've adjusted the perk pools so that you have a higher chance of getting what would be considered best in slot gear. They're adding these things called golden scarabs, which let you lock in the stat and 2 perks. So if you roll a legendary with your golden scarab, you're basically only looking for one roll, right? So there's a high likelihood, a very, very high likelihood that you'll be able to craft yourself best in slot weapons and armor. And if you do that, you get to kind of skip straight to the 600 for your expertise. So there's ways to skip a lot of the stuff that just used to be a huge pain point for a lot of people. The crafters are also getting a bunch of cool new armor sets to craft. There's a bunch of new lootable armor sets. There's you could craft the Chitin armor. There's a whole new Roman armor set. There's an Egyptian armor set. There's these things called Runestone glass gems, which adds a whole new aspect to how you do damage, how you can manage stamina, how much damage you take. So the gem system has been completely revamped in this new update. I have a video on that if you want to go check it out. I make some recommendations for what I've seen and what I tested. There's also the Greatsword. The Greatsword is easily the most versatile weapon in the game. It's just so fun to play. It does feel, for some people it feels a little slow, for others it feels a little fast. I think that's just because of how the weapon operates. And because of the stances you're in. If you're in an onslaught stance, the heavy attacks swing way faster, as fast as the light attack, so that's kind of odd. It messes up, you can mess with your timing, but once you get used to it, it's just such a fun weapon. And it's not one of those weapons like the rapier where it's, to use it effectively, kind of how it's built, it's super difficult, high skill cap. It's really easy to get into and just kind of use your abilities. But once you learn the nuances of the weapon is where it really shines. It's going to be a good weapon in anybody's hands that likes melee DPS or tanking, but in the people who really take the time to learn that weapon, there's a very, very, very high skill ceiling. Low barrier to entry, but a really high skill ceiling. They've done a really good job with the Greatsword itself. And that's going to be viable for everybody. For tanks, melee DPS, it's a good secondary for ranged weapon for bow. It's good in almost every part of the war. It's going to replace probably the Great Axe for some people. It's going to replace the Warhammer for some people. It's good for point tanking. It's good for bruising. It's good for a lot of different roles for wars. It's really good in PvE because it has a lot of tanking abilities. It's really good in arenas and OPR and 1v1s. It's just all around probably the best weapon right now, and they did a phenomenal job. Which kind of leads me into the new territory and wars and stuff. So Brimstone Sands itself is massive. It's 3 times the size of a regular zone. It has a really nice continuation of the main storyline quest that brings in some very interesting characters from from like historical characters from real history, and it just paints this really actually interesting story that we never really got to see when leveling up the first time around. And it adds a whole new layer to the game that we're playing. So the PvE side of it and the story side of it, the RPG side of this MMORPG, is actually coming to fruition right now, which is kind of why I say it's coming out of beta. They worked on the combat, they worked on the core systems, they released the game in that state. It is what it is, but now you're getting the RPG side of the MMO. Before it was just kind of an action combat game with territory management systems. Now it's like an actual MMO, in my opinion. So for Brimstone Sands, the main storyline quest continues. There's new solo dungeons that are pretty cool. They're quick, fun little dungeons where you go kill a few mobs and have to fight a mini boss or a boss, and then you get cool rewards and chests, and you find cool stuff. There's a lot more solo opportunity throughout the whole game. It gives you a solo mode, or you could go into group dungeons for basically from 1 through 25, and then it continues on in Brimstone Sands, and they're going to redo the 25 through 35 or 45 quest stuff next. They're going to update it a little bit. This is what they said. The new territory is just like the old ones that you could fight over, so a company can purchase it, and then people could go to war over it. You could buy houses there. The new player housing is really cool. It's expensive, so it's end game housing actually. That's super nice, super well done. But it all starts at about 10 or 15,000 and then scales up to 20,000. So it's mostly for the level 60s because you know all the mobs are level 60 plus anyway. So you're not going to get there until end game content. So they made the houses all super expensive. I think they should have given cheaper options for that, but that's just a little nitpicky in my opinion. But here's where we get into the real changes for me as somebody who runs a company, who is trying to get territories regularly, who has owned Windsward, who has owned Everfall, who has like the company that I'm the governor for has like at one point or another owned almost every territory on the map. Not at the same time, but at one point. There's massive economy overhauls coming with this patch. So as of the 18th, so I'm making this video on the 17th, but yeah, as of tomorrow, the entire economy of the game surrounding territory management is changing. It's all going to be pooled and distributed based on flat percentages. So Everfall and Windsward and Brimstone Sands are going to make 12.5% of that total pool. And then there's a second tier that gets 10%, and then a third tier that gets 7.5%. And then there's like 2 or 3 territories, I think First Light, Restless Shores, and Weaver's Fen, that make 5%. So you'll see the territories that make $5 million or 5 million gold a week drop down to 2 million, right? And those territories that were not even breaking even are jumping up to about 750,000 to $1 million. So the equity of resources in the game is shifting dramatically. This is going to highly affect the Fresh Start servers because they've been talking about how they want to get this out before those Fresh Start servers come out, and it's going to really affect those servers the most, right? Because they're getting a clean slate. There are no transfer servers. Everybody's going to have to make a level 1 character and level it up. And so there's going to be that race to 60 again. People are going to try to be the first people to buy Windsward or Everfall. And it's going to go and snowball from there. That's going to be a good thing and a bad thing. I can see some pretty weird stuff happening on the Fresh Start servers already, judging by what I see in the forum, what I've heard from people playing on major servers, from what I've seen watching people's streams, but I'll get into that afterwards. Right now I just kind of want to talk about the good stuff. What else is there? So the smaller companies are going to have a better advantage of getting these smaller territories because the main companies are only going to be fighting over Everfall, Windsward, and Brimstone Sands because they make more than twice as much as the lower tier territories. So the competition's naturally going to go to where the most money is, right? That's where the big companies are going to fight over. That's where the highest level of competition is going to be. But it's still going to be more equitable. So taking a territory is going to be easier because of other changes, and it's going to be more profitable for everybody as a whole. It's going to be less profitable for super companies, more profitable for the smaller companies. It's going to work out great. So that kind of leads me into the changes for war. How do you get territory? You know, before we've seen a lot of these 100-man to 200-man super companies that were split up into 2, 3, 4, 5 companies, sometimes 8, and each, you know, there's servers out there that are completely owned by one company with 8 different shell companies. They are trying to get rid of that. And the way that they're trying to get rid of that is by implementing a defense system where 35 out of the 50 players in the roster, in the war roster for that war, have to come from the company that is defending. Attackers can pick whoever they want. They can do mercs, they could have 0 people from the actual company that's attacking and then merc out the whole 50-man roster if they wanted to. But the people who are defending have to have at least 35 members from their company in the war. They've said that they want that change to happen before fresh start servers as well. So from what the community management people are talking about, they said it might even come out tomorrow with the Brimstone, so on the 18th of October with the Brimstone Sands patch, or it might come out the following week, or it might come out November 2nd. But sometime between the release of Brimstone and November 2nd, they're going to do a huge shift in how wars are attacked and defended. So the smaller companies won't really be able to hold territory, but they'll still be able to take territory. They'll be able to take it and then lose it immediately because they won't have, if you don't have 35 members, you're not going to be able to defend your territory, and it's going to flip. So we're going to see a lot more turnover. You're not going to see as many people holding on to territories for months and months and months and months. And the ability of these super companies to, you know, leave one company to join another to defend over there, and then, you know, the same 50 people are on every single war roster. Every single company that wants to own territories is going to have 35 members at minimum. Another thing that's happening is there's going to be a war cooldown. So if you leave a company, you're not going to be able to participate in a war with another company for, I think, 72 hours. So that completely gets rid of the ability for people to jump from company to company to company doing a war, like even multiple companies in the same day doing a war for each of them. So they're going to have to wait 72 hours before they can do another war. So yeah, it's going to be nutty. Territories are going to flip all the time. I think it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see it. Other cool stuff is that there's new servers. Every region got at least 1 to 2 new servers in preparation for this expansion. Those are already out, most of them. That's not the fresh start servers, but they just made normal servers that are new and people transferred into them. Now a lot of servers are server locked so that people can't kind of abuse the system. They're a lot less cluttered. These new servers are a lot smaller. They're a lot less competitive. Some of the bigger companies have kind of went in there temporarily to try to milk some money out of them, and now they're leaving to go back to bigger, you know, was some East Coast companies on the West Coast that are kind of taken off. There's some East Coast companies that went to the EU. You know, there's people, from what I understand, is there was an East Coast company that tried to get some people into Australia. That didn't really work out too well. But yeah, these new servers are a lot less. They're still a lot less cluttered. You know, they're like peaking at like 400 or 500 people. Sometimes like 8 now. I think is on the West Coast. I think the East Coast servers are getting kind of full. The new servers are getting more full. But they're a lot more fun, you know. So like you could go over there, you can mine, you can actually go farm, you could craft, you could do all that stuff, and you don't have to worry about as many bots, and all those resources are going to be available to you. And they haven't had as much time to be kind of tainted by the imbalances from the main servers, right? So that's a huge a huge upside if you wanted to kind of come back now and mess around on a newer server and just kind of relearn the game, and then maybe come back for real like November 2nd, right? I would say that would kind of be my play, is wait for the fresh start. Maybe come in, test out Brimstone, mess around a bit, see if you still want to play the game, and then wait like a week or two and start a new character and experience experience it all for the first time like it was being released today. I think that experience would be the best way to do it. Start your new character on the fresh start server, get the new player experience, go all the way from the time you hit the beach till the time you hit the sands and Brimstone. So that's what I recommend. Other stuff, it's way easier to make money now with Brimstone Sands, because you can craft those BIS items way easier. It's going to be a little bit more time intensive because you're going to have to make a lot more little things to, or find the scarabs, or either craft or find the scarabs and then get the craft mods and stuff like that. But you'll be able to craft a lot more best in slot items. So some of that stuff's going to get a little devalued, but it's going to be a lot more available, and you're going to be able to sell it more often because everybody's looking for it, right? And not everybody wants to be a crafter. So crafters are going to be able to make money a lot easier. Town boards are going to make money, a little bit more money. There's just a ton of new ways to make money. By Brimstone Sands even existing, there's all kinds of new markets to explore with, sandstone and sulfur, and there's all kinds of materials out there that need to be farmed. So if you're out there spending time running around that huge territory, you're going to make a lot of money, because a lot of it's super kind of hard to get. They've made sulfur specifically hard to get because there's elite monsters around there that will kill bots. Like if you're not an actual player that's somewhat decent, like you're going to die. So you have to kill all the mobs before you get most of the sulfur. Otherwise, you're just going to be dead. So it's going to be hard to bot, and the value of that sulfur is going to go way up. I can make another video about that by itself. But yeah, the fresh start servers are coming out. All the storage boxes are now shared between all cities. The item transfer is free, so you don't have to worry about, spending a ton of Azoth or gold to transfer your food from Everfall to Monarch's Bluff or something, It's just a lot easier. And people have been kind of using that to keep their gear separate instead of because there's no loadouts, which are coming. The loadouts are coming somewhat soon, I think they said, but for now people are using the separate storages as kind of loadouts for their, their war gear, their OPR gear, their war gear, their arena gear, their mutation gear for this dungeon, and this dungeon. It's actually it's a pretty nice little system. It's not too bad. I still am waiting for loadouts. I'm waiting for transmogs. They said those are going to come. They said mounts are coming. There's all kinds of cool stuff coming. They've hinted at maybe an island or some kind of naval combat or some kind of ship something. We don't really know yet. They've hinted at it. But yeah, they've confirmed mounts. They've hinted at a whole nother round of armor and weapon perks. They've added the dungeon finder. The trade post has been overhauled, so now you can look for weapons with specific perks at specific gear score under a certain price, and you could do up to 3 perks that it could have any or all of them. So they've added a pretty decent filtration system for the trade post. There's just a lot of cool stuff that they've updated. Yeah, this is how the game should have came out. If it came out like this, it would have done way better. In my opinion, it's way worth, if you've already purchased it, or if you like action combat and you like MMOs that you can play solo or with a group and join companies and do the competitive stuff, I think it's a great game. I've been playing it for over a year now. I think it's fantastic. So I would definitely pick it up. But with that said, there is still some issues. The main issue is the meta is still relatively the same for wars. I think that is going to change drastically with Brimstone Sands. I think we're going to see a lot less Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet. I think we're going to see a lot more Sword and Shields for Point Tank. I think we're going to see a lot of great axes or great swords. I think we're gonna see stuff like weird stuff, like maybe Void Gauntlet Greatsword or Void Gauntlet Blunderbuss, and I think we're gonna see, you know, Sword Shield Blunderbuss and Heavy, Sword Shield Blunderbuss and Light. I think the Blunderbuss and Greatsword are gonna play heavily into the meta because they're going towards time to kill. But I think that the meta is going to change significantly in Brimstone. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing is yet to be seen. Because, in my opinion, they're kind of following the route of Elder Scrolls Online with their PvP. And they're making everything about time to kill. Time to kill is the most important thing in New World in New World right now for the wars, right? So, and it's only leaning into that with with this latest patch with Brimstone, with the Greatsword coming out and how much damage it does, with the heavy attacks being the same speed as the light attacks in Onslaught, with the burst damage from Crosscut, with the burst damage from Skyward Slash, its ability to kind of outplay and block stuff that it really has no place doing. It's just really, really good. And the Blunderbuss is a huge time to kill weapon. Its instant combos are just out of control, like basically still almost one shot. If you go up, if you catch somebody in the back and they don't know how to use their stamina properly, like they're gonna die. If you're good with the Blunderbuss, right? You could use the Blunderbuss with the Great Axe, Great Sword, Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet. You know, I've seen Blunderbuss rapiers now, so like there's all kinds of stuff, but it's all revolving around those high time to kill weapons. You know, the Great Sword or the Great Axe Warhammer is still a huge part of wars right now. Great Axe or Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet's still huge, but that's going to drop off because of some changes. I'm going to make a whole video about what's changing with the meta and all that. But yeah, I think going towards time to kill and lowering mobility is a very slippery slope. Making it a race for time to kill while also reducing mobility of like the light armor and medium armor players is very slippery, right? Because then I think in my opinion, you might start seeing a lot more heavy and medium people with just these cannons, Blunderbuss and Greatsword, just run around dominating wars. The cool thing is that, like, with that also comes bows being more viable, muskets are more viable. We're starting to see that stuff in kill squads. We're starting to see, instead of one kill squad with like light armor players and like high DPS, high mobility, lockdown CC like Sword Shield, Warhammer, and light armor and stuff, we're starting to see, instead of one group of those people, you'll have like a group with three muskets or two muskets and a bow, with a Sword Shield Warhammer that can lock people down, and then you'll see like a 2 Fire Staff combo with a Ice Gauntlet Blunderbuss and a Light Bruiser, and there's like 3 of these groups, right? So we're seeing a lot more versatility in the meta lately, but it still relatively revolves around the same aspect of clumping, right? It's just who can kill whose healers faster and who can clump harder, and then get out of the clump faster. Like, that's basically what the meta is, and it hasn't shifted away from that style of combat since the game started. So that's a little stagnant, but I think it's going to change a little bit, but not huge. I don't think the Great Sword is a big enough shift. I think they're going to need like a solid ranged burst damage weapon, like really ranged. Some kind of mix between like a bow plus a Fire Staff, you know, that can actually burst clumps down from range before anything real shifts from the current meta of clumping. So that's kind of stagnant. It's still a lot of fun, but it's getting a little stale. The Greatsword is coming at a really good time, because otherwise it would have gotten pretty bad. But the biggest thing that I'm worried about is that they're doing all these awesome changes for wars, but they haven't done, in my opinion, the one thing that is actually going to prevent people from abusing the system, and that's preventing people from having excess accounts, or banning people for manipulating the war system, right? We're still seeing people throw wars. We're seeing people with now like 2, 3, 4, 5 accounts. Like there's people out there with 10 characters. Like that's, I mean, I don't even know how they do it, but if you manage to get even half, if say you have 4 accounts and you manage to get 4 of those players onto the same server and all into the same faction, you effectively can make 4 shells. You can be in 4 different purple companies at the same time. So what we're going to see is, I think we're going to see these highly ultimate competitive servers form, where you, instead of like the modern shell where you just switch from company to company to company, I think that people are going to have 4 different accounts on the same server, right, with 4 characters, and then the other characters will be on, 4 of them will be on Valhalla, right, and then another 4 will be on Yggdrasil, right, or another 4 will be on this server and then this server, with these people that have 4 accounts, and then they'll just still be able to own 4 territories with those companies because they have 4 characters in the same faction on each territory or each server. So it's going to limit it to 1 to 2 servers for the most part where companies can do this, but it's still not going to fix the actual issue unless they start banning people for manipulating the war system. I can see having 1 character per server. That isn't a huge deal. But having multiple characters on the same server is going to be the same thing as being able to jump from company to company to company. And these bigger companies are already talking about doing it, right? So that's not going to change. There's still lag issues from here and there. They're getting a lot better, that it's going to be an issue. Every MMO sees lag spikes. Anything with high server load is going to see lag spikes. Unfortunately, this is a action combat MMO, so it affects us more, right? That missed headshot with your musket because you got a lag spike sucks. That missed shot with a bow sucks. Having your character teleport 5 feet when you were just about to kill somebody is not fun. The good thing is that it happens rarely, right? It's not happening all the time. The servers have become a lot more stable. They're doing a lot of work in that direction, and I think as they fix the instance wars and they fix the instance invasions and they tweak the OPR instancing a little bit, and all of these different instances and servers like get a little bit more stabilized, I think that isn't really going to be an issue for very much longer. There's still no ranked anything, which is a huge shame because this is a competitive PvP MMO. Like, they can say that it's a fully fleshed out, MMO with great story and everything, which now it's leaning, it's at that starting point, but they're still at the beginning, right? The storyline is just now getting good. We just now even know what the heck the story is because of the new player experience, right? They've just added that part of it, but they've just kind of slapped that a new foundation on top of an existing, underneath an existing structure, right? So it's still at its core a competitive PvP MMO, and if that's what you like, I think you should for sure come back. If that's not what you like, then I think you might want to play it 1 to 60 because the story is pretty cool. I think the story, where the story is going, I think has legs in my opinion. I think it's going to be really cool. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what happens with the story. But for them to not have ranked anything in, even 1v1s or 3v3s, no 5v, there's no 1v1 arenas, there's no 5v5 arenas, there's no ranked arenas, there's no ranked OPR. The war, the only type of ranking system you have is who owns what territory. There's no instanced wars yet outside of the ones that actually matter for territory. So there's no way for people to practice wars without doing, hours worth of pushing with their whole company, which is another problem. Pushing sucks. It shouldn't be involved. It shouldn't be a thing. There should be another mechanic for pushing, or they should make pushing more fun. The quest system for pushing is dumb. There's no new OPR maps. There's no 1v1 arenas or 3v3s. They need new OPR game modes for sure. They said they're going to come. Who knows when those will come out. For the PvEers, there's no ranked dungeons. There's no raids. The mutations are kind of in this weird spot where they're either too easy or too difficult. So you're seeing on the harder mutation weeks, you're seeing a lot of exclusivity for the people who don't have full, corruption ward gear, with corruption bane weapons and all fire resistance gems aren't going to make it into the depth or dynasty mutations. They just won't. Like at the M10 level, like people won't pick you up because Thorpe will one-shot you and then you lose your gold and there goes a few thousand emerald shards, right? So that's kind of a bummer. They need to kind of tweak the balance for those. The mutations are also kind of repetitive. They're all somewhat reskinned versions of each other with slightly different mechanics, which is kind of to be expected, and they're making new mutations all the time. But the mutation rotation needs to be... They need to add vastly different mechanics to some mutations. Some of them are a lot of fun. And like Tempest was a really awesome dungeon, and the mutations for Tempest are really difficult, and they can be really difficult, but it's just I don't think it's quite there yet. The PvE aspect of it still needs a little bit of work. The story is finally getting there. The mutations are a good start. The new dungeon looks freaking awesome. I haven't played it yet, but it looks great. From what I've heard, it's amazing. From what I heard, it's actually super hard without even doing a mutation. So, can't wait to get killed a million times in that mutation. But the difficulty scaling is off, and the reward system is a little off too. I think if the M10 mutations need to be a little bit more rewarding for how difficult some of them are. What else is there? There's new, the new gems are really cool. What else? There's some cool stuff. I think that's all I got for now. That's all I have written down. So, yeah, definitely worth it. If you like action combat, if you like PvP, and you want like a decent story that you could blow through in like a week, I highly recommend it. If you're a returning player and you already have it, play it. Pick it up. It's genuinely fun. And I'm not just saying this because of Copium or because I have a year invested in it. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't be playing it. So, yeah, come check it out. Come have fun. Jump into New World. New players, jump on in, try it out. I think you'll love it, especially if you like that style of gameplay. If you like the tab targeting MMOs, probably not your cup of tea. But you might want to try it. You might actually end up liking it. So, yeah, New World is finally out of beta. Come check it out. Thanks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave your angry comments below. Tell me how much New World sucks and you're never coming back, whatever. Yeah, enjoy. Have a wonderful day.